With fusion rifles getting a 40% increase to their damage for the next 6 months via particle deconstruction, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that fusion rifles are currently a fantastic boss damage option. So let's cut right to the chase. There is very little reason for me to suggest using things other than 1000 voices. If you don't have 1000 voices, you're not going to be completely in the dark, as there are a couple of things that can be on par with it, along with one loadout that we should really acknowledge. Let's start basic with legendary fusion rifles. Season of the Lost had the fusion archetype get some adjustments to make them slightly different from one another. Fast fusions got faster and slow fusions got slower. Today we're going to be doing some damage testing to figure out what is going to be worth your while. Damage testing was done on Kali, accounting for the fact that Kali has a 2x headshot multiplier. We can use some data from the past to make things easy for us when determining Fusion Rifle DPS. Back when people actually used to use snipers in PvE, there were a couple of rules established. Faster rate of fire snipers gave higher DPS but lower total damage, and slower rate of fire snipers gave lower DPS but a higher total damage over the course of all of your ammo reserves. This rule applies to fusion rifles as well. Essentially, this means that you should use faster rate of fire fusions for when you need to maximize the time that you have to deal the most damage, and you should use slower ones when you have a lot more time and each shot on an individual basis matters much more. Whittling down a GM Nightfall boss without an enrage timer means you could opt for a slower, harder hitting fusion because you want to make sure you're dealing the most amount of damage possible per shot, but you're also not racing to kill the boss. Something like fighting a champion might demand faster damage, as you would want to kill it during the window that it is vulnerable. Bosses like Templar and Taniks can be one-cycled rather quickly, so going for higher DPS can mean securing that one-cycle kill. There are technically 5 types of fusion rifles: rapid fire, adaptive, precision, high impact, and aggressive. The only aggressive fusion rifle is Coriolis Force, which is a horizontal firing fusion rifle, and I don't know how many people are really using that because of that reason. A horizontal line of beams is likely to have some of those beams miss unless you're fighting a very wide target. That being said, it performs the second best in terms of average DPS among the archetypes, but none of the fusion types come close to rapid fire in terms of DPS. Many people are using Null Composure, the literal fusion rifle from Season of the Splicer, as a DPS option thanks to it having reservoir burst and high impact reserves. My testing does confirm that slower fusions are lower DPS and higher total damage, whereas faster fusions are higher DPS but lower total damage. Next, we have the exotic special ammo regular fusions: Jotun, Bastion, Telesto, and Merciless. Unsurprisingly, Merciless is going to top the damage meters here thanks to its ability to keep speeding up its charge time when it hits but doesn't kill. Against a boss, that means in the second half of the magazine, you're firing at near instant speed for a fusion with incredibly high impact. Jotun and Telesto fail to even beat a regular rapid-fire fusion rifle in terms of DPS, and that's because even though they have very interesting exotic effects, they still take much longer to fire than rapid-fire fusions, and their effects don't necessarily mean that they are producing more damage as a result. Bastion, on the other hand, actually exceeds rapid-fire fusions in terms of DPS, and that's because of how it functions. It fires a 3-shot burst with every click of the trigger, so it's almost like a hybrid type of fusion. The shot takes a while to fire, but you get a fast fusion style of damage thanks to the 3-shot burst you get out of the gun. However, it is definitely outdone by Merciless, purely because of Merciless's ramping speed. It also struggles against smaller or fast-moving targets like this Lost Sector boss, and missing any burst within a shot is a pretty big loss. However, most of the targets you'll be fighting in high-end content, like champions and bosses, tend to not move a ton, so it really shouldn't be that big of a deal. How about our 2 linear fusion friends, Arbalist and the new Lawrence Driver? Well, Both of them basically performed pretty much exactly the same with very similar damage numbers on a per shot basis. As a result, both of them, once we adjust our damage because of Kali's 2x multiplier, are around the performance of Bastion in terms of DPS over the course of one magazine. Both have their positives and negatives though, with Bastion able to ramp up particle deconstruction almost instantly and not relying on crits, but with the linears being able to reliably deal damage from significantly farther away. Now, Lawrence Driver's main bonus can get you a 50% damage increase on all shots fired from that weapon for 30 seconds. That is a significant ramp up, and provided that you can get the damage bonus active, that's going to send you well past Merciless in terms of potential DPS. The problem is getting that perk to proc. You need to kill 3 individually marked targets, run out, and then grab the item that they drop, and then be in position for damage, and then have it not run out during damage. Is it better than the big boys, though? Hang on a second. Let's talk about them. Introducing the mitochondria of the Fusion Rifle class, Sleeper and 1000 Voices are powerhouses. Sleeper was also buffed recently to give it some more slaying power. In a 1 magazine DPS test, it's not even close. Sleeper Simulant comes out on top by a landslide over 1000 Voices, assuming you have the Catalyst. But unlike everything else we tested, as we continue to fire the weapons and get towards more of an average DPS, the two become very, very close. Over the course of all of your reserves in a head-to-head battle, Sleeper does end up winning in DPS by about 500, and also deals a little bit more damage, requiring only 2 more seconds to do so. If you don't have the Catalyst, then 1000 Voices is going to be the winner here. Now we need to look at the positives and negatives of using both. Sleeper has a lot of negatives. It's a linear fusion, so it needs to crit, and it suffers from not getting them. It stacks PD very slowly, and that's it. And there was no error made here at all, and I'm not editing it later. 1000 Voices, on the other hand, doesn't rely on crits, stacks PD in one shot, and also that's it. But it's also really, really easy to blow yourself up with 1000 Voices compared to blowing yourself up with Sleeper. 1K is undoubtedly easier to use though. There is some potential to make the ricochet shots work for you when using Sleeper, but the average player is definitely not doing any sort of bounce shooting unless there is a brain-dead easy setup for it. Let's double back to Lawrence Driver with its 50% damage bonus. It does some serious work, staying up there with the likes of Sleeper Simulant. But the reason I'm not going to recommend it in a raid setting is because for most people, it's just simply not worth the effort getting it to that point, considering the kind of timings and precision you need to hit. When you can do something like this to Templar, 3, 2, 1, go. I'm trapped. Thank you. That was even faster than the last time. And I didn't even fire any shots. Or this to Atheon.
Oh, get a cleansing one.
It's me. I'm off to the left.
Get it. Oh, let's go.
Or this to Tanix.
Oh.
What happened to you?
Oh.
I'll wait for the boot. When it's that easy to outright destroy raid bosses, why go through the effort, you know? In more intimate settings like Master or GM Nightfalls, sure, you can keep up Lawrence Driver much more consistently, and there are a lot of champions and big targets to utilize that bonus damage on. But in a raid setting, I just don't think you really need to bother. Before we go though, there's one more thing that I want to take a look at. Cartesian Coordinate. It's a legendary rapid fire fusion in the energy slot. And it can roll with Vorpal weapon. And because it's legendary, it can get a boss spec mod. Which means Anarchy can take that heavy slot quite easily. So Anarchy is doing 5,777 DPS to Cali on its own. Cartesian Coordinate is 12,912 DPS times 1.15 for Vorpal times another 1.08 for boss spec. That's 16,036 DPS. Add them together and you're just shy of 22,000. You're at 21,813 for 1 magazine's worth of shooting. After 2 magazines worth of shooting and refreshing Anarchy, we're floating around probably low 18,000, maybe dipping into 17,000. That's still higher than Sleeper Simulant and 1,000 Voices when we start to average out. Not only that, but we run out of ammo around the same time we'd be running out of ammo with Sleeper Simulant and 1,000 Voices, and we still have Anarchy ticking. The difference maker here is simply going to be Anarchy versus a different energy weapon like a fusion rifle. You can use Cartesian Coordinate or Null Composure or any legendary fusion with Sleeper or 1K. You need both Cartesian and Anarchy to maintain that pace versus either just 1K or Sleeper. But if you have an Anarchy and no 1,000 Voices and no Sleeper Catalyst, well, it's an option. Ultimately, 1,000 Voices requires little to no effort in order to pull off, and it generates some of the highest damage possible. Which is why it's hard for me to recommend a whole hell of a lot else. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.